What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OG GM, drinking some sponsored coffee and coming to you live on a foggy, cloudy, rainy Monday post-Easter morning, which, if nothing else, means half off candy at the store. Yay, half off Easter candy. It's Monday. It's April the 10th. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's time to take a look at all the tabletop role-playing game news stories that are going to be our compass, our cardinal north, our star to sail by for the week. What controversies, what news, what nonsense is going to be? Why is that light on? It's not supposed to be on. Wonder how long it's been on. There's a light inside the closet. I don't know what's on. Or how long it's been on, or if I'm going to have an outrageously high electricity bill now. You don't care. All right. So first, is there anything going on in the tabletop role-playing game community that doesn't involve our favorite people, Wizards of the Coast? Let's take a look. Oh, Wizards of the Coast, 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 Wizards. Nightmare Fuel. Nightmare Fuel. This is a stuffed animal. Would you really want this in your kid's bed? This is horrific. Wizards of the Coast. Ah, here we go. Paizo has announced a partnership with BKOM Studios to create 2 new Pathfinder games. That's BKOM, not BROM or BOOM, who are also companies that have the same or similar name. So, yeah. Just in case you're thinking, oh, those are the guys that do. No, these are different guys. Anyways, they're doing some video games. Now, the previous few Paizo-inspired video games have been relatively popular. Obviously, they don't get as much press as, say, whatever video game gets the most press, the back rooms or whatever. But, I mean, they're Baldur's Gate, similar style, top-down, fantasy art real-time tactic games, and apparently they're very good. So it might be interesting to see what these guys do. I am not familiar with BKOM Studios. Apparently they've been around for 26 years. But have you made anything anybody's worked on? Apparently they mostly work on mobile games. So yeah, that's probably why you haven't heard of them. Catalyst has released some new stuff for Shadowrun. This is set in the Shadowrun 6th World post-Fall of Seattle setting, which is the current setting for the Shadowrun 6th edition. Because apparently Catalyst games are fans of if we make the title really long, it'll stand out. So if you are not aware of it, because I brought it up before, the full title for the current Shadowrun is Shadowrun 6th Edition, Fall of the 6th World, Fall of Seattle. So that is the full title or something like that, but we can just call it Shadowrun 6th Edition. Anyways, if you're looking for some Shadowrun fun, this is $50. It should be available sometime this week. Steve Jackson's doing stuff. Steve Jackson Game has announced a new CEO for the company, Meredith Placco. She replaces former CEO Phil Reed. And I don't know who she is. She is got a history in making miniatures, and she also worked for NPC. So she's a media producer. So that's nice. Steve Jackson is hiring somebody who actually knows how to work the media and work the people and work communications, as opposed to, say, other company who continues to hire people who don't know how to have meaningful diplomatic conversations at conventions, not mentioning any names. But hey, yeah, your new CEO is media savvy. Way to go, Steve Jackson Games. Chaosium, yay, Chaosium has got some stuff going on. The current Chaosium executive editor, James Lauder, has stepped down. No replacement has been named at this time, but for the moment, Susan O'Brien will take up the day-to-day management of Chaosium. Look, guys, you've already got a built-in CEO. Just get, Cthulhu to run the company. He probably is already, isn't he? Chaosium also released their brand new rule set for their basic role-playing engine, the core rule engine that powers all their other systems like Pendragon, Superworld, and of course, Call of Cthulhu. This is an updated version of the basic rules, which they really haven't touched in a while. They haven't really needed to, but yeah, they released it. It's $29 for the PDF. There is a physical copy coming out, I think, next month. So far, the reviews for it are not great. Like, there is blatant typos and editing mistakes in it, not great. Like, it feels like it was rushed to the printer just so they could take a hold of the current news before it was too late. Great, not great. So as much as I would have loved to see, a new copy of the rules, because mine is pretty threadbare and it's the most basic version of it, so I would have loved to see one that also covered like Superworld and the other stuff. And I was looking forward to picking up the hardback for this when it came out, because I'm a huge fan. But really, guys, you didn't even take time to fix typos? We'll see what happens with that. And speaking of companies making other games, we got not one, but two big announcements. Announcement number one. Remember these guys? The ORC? They finally released the ORC. Well, the first draft of the ORC came out over the weekend. I went through the Q&A. Was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? I haven't gone through the actual document yet. I am cautiously optimistic about it because it feels much less heavy-handed than the Wizards of the Coast current nonsense. There is, though, I have been told, a morality clause in the actual open game RPG license, the ORCL from Paizo. So I will go and actually try to read through the thing, though, as anybody who's ever actually tried to read through legalese would know, it's pretty much, if you had a choice between like getting a tooth pulled and going through a legal document, I think most people would choose tooth pull because they're just painful to read. They're just painful to read. I have been on the Open RPG Discord, reading some of the posts, and for the people who understand it, they've given very much long, eloquent, very diplomatic, very deep into the workings of rule of law type 20-page long, descriptions and interpretations. And for the rest of us, people like me, there's like 30 or 40% of the people on the Discord for ORC who are just like, examples would be nice. Because my brain can't just, a simple WikiHow example of what this means would have been way nicer, preferably with pictures. But then you got the other percentage who would like totally understand this. So if you want to see a breakdown on this, head on over to the Discord, or wait for me to read it and try and break it down to simple, easy 6-year-old English. And speaking of, again, hey, this is happening, still happening. Project Black Flag changed their name to Tales of the Valiant for reasons I don't understand, but they changed it. So now it is not Project Black Flag anymore. It's Tales of the Valiant. And we went through this news brief the other day, and it was confusing. So, examples. Because apparently they are making a thing, but they're also making another thing that is both separate from the thing, but also part of the thing. At which point I was like, well, why do I need to buy this if you're just making this and they're the same thing? Also, you already have a world. Why didn't you just call it Midgard, the role-playing game? Or maybe you can't because Midgard's a name that other people have sunk their... I don't know, but you've already got a setting. But you decided to change it from Project Black Flag, which is a name I liked, to Tales of the Valiant, which is a name, sounds like a Marvel Comics from the 80s, Spider-Man 2-for-1. Tales of the Valiant, starring Spider-Man and Wolverine. Tales of the Valiant, starring Spider-Man and the Human Torch. Remember those, the 2-for-1s? Yeah, it sounds like that kind of thing. Tales of the Valiant, Batman and Plastic Man. Yeah. But maybe it's re-embracing the pulp fantasy aspect of D&D. So who knows? I mean, right now we've seen 3 play tests, and it looks like a direct ripoff of 5e. So we'll see. I went over this in depth. You can see that on my site. All right. Well, I guess that's it. There's nothing else to talk about today. There's no... oh, wait. Yeah, there is. Because we got this. And oh, my giddy aunt. If we have learned any lesson over the past 2 weeks, 1, Wizards of the Coast should no longer be allowed to speak to the public. And 2, Jeremy Crawford should no longer be allowed to speak to the public. So let's talk about the first one and work our way down through the nightmare that is Wizards of the Coast news. So if you want to hear Wizards of the Coast news, stick around. If you don't want to hear Wizards of the Coast news, stop now because I've probably already gone over it. But it's going to be the thing, guys. Let's take a break first. Remember, half off candy at the stores today, post Easter. All right, if you left, I completely understand it. If you're still here, you're a victim of punishment because you want to hear me talk about Wizards of the Coast. So let's go. Story number 1. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, the multi-million-dollar movie that was going to save the world of Dungeons & Dragons. Can you get an amen? Can I get an amen, ladies and gentlemen? Amen. Had a disappointing opening weekend at a closing at 34 million domestic, 75 million counting Asia. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7. So what was that? I mean, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70s is 40. That's nothing. That's 40 million Asian. That's, yeah. So it closed the week with a total box office of about 75 million, which I guess was right within the ballpark of what they expected it to make, but it is in no way, shape, or form a success. Well, they can follow that up with a week of horrible reviews, scathing commentary, people just going, oh my God, this movie is just not, I mean, it's fine, it's fun, but wow, it's considered a worse movie than Shazam, Wrath of the Gods. So yeah, and it's made less money than Shazam, Wrath of the Gods. So yeah, Chris Pine has already said in regards to the sequel, he wants to get back to serious acting. And Renee, whatever, the guy who was on Bridgerton, but left Bridgerton to do the D&D movie because he thought he would have a better career doing movies than being on the multi-million-dollar #1 show on Netflix, has now said, maybe I want to go back and do more Bridgerton. Yeah. And if you're wondering why, over the weekend between Friday night and Sunday night, Honor Amongst Thieves made $3 million box office. 3, not 30, $3 million box office. That's not good. That's not good. Mario made $52 million, which is also not good. So moving on to story number 2, Jeremy Crawford and the whole half-elf bad thing. Half-elf bad thing. This was once again of a Jeremy Crawford saying something that didn't need to be said, that caused a media disaster that could have been avoided if somebody just went, no. Because first off, as many people mentioned to me, the stuff that Jeremy Crawford said was already in the playtest. It was in the very first playtest and covered again in the loosely in the third playtest. So there was absolutely no reason for Crawford to bring it up. And there was no reason for him to say half-elves are racist because, oh boy, did that. I mean, people were just like, oh yeah, because we've, showing up pictures of Nazis, showing up pictures of the Jim Crow Act, showing up pictures of people boycotting Black people being able to enter schools in the 50s and 60s. Yeah, I mean, people compared this to just horrible racist allegory statements that have been made throughout the years in regards to people of mixed race heritage. So yeah, now I guess on some level it makes sense. We're changing the mechanics. You can still, I mean, if you read the thing, it says, yeah, sure, if you want to still be half elf, you can. We're just getting rid of the word. But then tieflings and all the other half races are still in there. Half cats, half birds, half demon, half dragon, half giant, half carrot. They're all still in there, but they all have their own names. They're not called half giant anymore. They're called Goliath. So they could have just changed the name. Don't call it half elf anymore. Call it something else. If you can't use the Tolkien name, paralabel, you could have come up with your own name or just whatever. You know, you had the Ardlings, which you made up, which were half, beast. So, yeah, you could have just changed the name. Nothing. No damage done. You could have just left things where it stood. Hey, we're playtesting this. What do you think? Positive or negative? You didn't do that. You could have not said anything. You could have just, bam. We changed it. Screw you. You don't like it, you don't have to include it in your game. But here's the mechanic. We didn't put half elves in. We don't have to justify why we didn't put half elves in. These are the races we're using now. It's not saying we won't revisit them in the future, but bam, here's Player's Handbook 2024. No half elves, no half orcs, no explanation. We don't need to. You either like it or you don't. These are all the things they could have done. They should have done. But instead, they rolled Crawford out from whatever vat of brine they're storing him in and allowed him to pontificate in his usual manner of wasting 40 minutes to an hour to give you 5 minutes of actual content and turn something that could have been a simple mathematical playtest question into a media disaster. And for every person who's like, it's no big deal, there's other people who are like, this is totally a good deal. I totally love this. Half elves are so racist. That said nobody ever until a week ago. For 50 years of this hobby, nobody ever said half elves are racist until a week ago. Now people are like, oh yeah, I need to jump on this cultural bandwagon. So yes, it's racist. And then we got the other people who are like, dude, this is not a thing. Why did you make this a thing? This is just more Wizards of the Coast stupidity. And I am now that I'm over my anger and again, this is just another example of, guys, stop. Stop. Moving forward in the week of Wizards of the Coast news, look at this. This is all coming out of that direct conference D&D Creator Summit, which has just proven to be a disaster on every level. First, we can talk about just the choices they meant of people to invite. Like, one of the attendees is a young woman who has 7 followers. 7 followers. But apparently she said something at a convention that got somebody's hackles up. So they felt she was a good addition as a D&D creator to bring. 7 followers. Then they had Connie Chang there, who has never said one good thing about Wizards of the Coast, who has been vehemently opposed to the racism of Dungeons and Dragons. They invited her. Then they invited people like Bob Worldbuilder. Then they invited people with 2,000, 3,000 subs. They invited people with 1,000 subs. They invited people who were always saying good things about Wizards of the Coast. They invited people who have been, wibbly wobbly on the fence, but who wasn't there? Jeannie D wasn't there, but who was? Jeannie Darling. The difference between Jeannie D and Jeannie Darling? One of them shows a little bit more titties than the other. And I'm going to let you figure out which one. Every story we are hearing out of that is just basically they lost control. It was boring. They didn't answer the questions we wanted to answer. The information they gave us, we already knew. They didn't get, there's a lot of complaints about we asked for technical specs. We didn't receive the technical specs, so we were not prepared to ask questions. And then we were told, oh, you'll get the technical specs for D&D Beyond and the virtual tabletop after. Now, mind you, this also happened after we had the D&D Direct thing, which, was the half an hour thing, which basically said the exact same thing that this 6-hour thing said. But because none of the people that they dragged out to talk to the audience was actually prepared for an intellectual debate or prepared to deal with the angry masses, it fell apart. It fell apart badly. And in order to compensate for it falling apart badly, what do? They roll out Perkins and Crawford at the end to make it even worse. They allowed the audience to gain control of the topics and turn it from a this is what a presentation about the future plans of Dungeons and Dragons 2023-2024 into a media nightmare. Now, we could go individually into each story that came out of it, but we've already buried this story for as long as we could. Nightmare fuel. This is nightmare fuel. Why would you want your child to have this? This is just nightmare fuel. We could go over these stories that we already have, and I'm sure we will go again. But so far, yeah. It has not been a good week for them. And of course, here's the Q4 2022 earnings call transcript. We've already gone over this. This is all the money they made before 2023. So this is all the money they made before the January disaster. So before January 2023, at the end of 2022, they were doing okay. They were not doing great. They were doing okay. D&D made about 60% of the sales for the Q4. They were making about half the amount of revenue in Q4 that they were making in Q1. Total revenue down about 25%. Operating cash flow between the end of the year and the beginning of the year was definitely down, but not, that down. Did they make the $1 billion in 2022 that they wanted to make? No, they did not. They fell short. They didn't fall short by much, but they fell short. So they had an okay year before 2023. 2022 closes for them okay. Not great. Okay. We've already gone over this before. How they're planning on changing everything, how they have this $1 billion thing, how Wizards of the Coast was supposed to make them $1 billion. D&D was supposed to make them $1 billion by the end of 2022. It didn't. Now, remember, these numbers might look positive, but these numbers are before January. We are waiting for the Q1 numbers. Are you exhausted yet? Because I am. But don't worry, because Wizards of the Coast still has not fully addressed the OGL issues of January. Wizards of the Coast still has not apologized. Wizards of the Coast still has not actually explained anything they have planned for 2024. It doesn't even have a name. Okay? Dungeons & Dragons Evolve, which is what I'm calling it, 2024 D&D still does not have a D&D name. Its name currently is, it's not 5.5, it's not 5, it's not 6, it's not 1 D&D. It's something completely different. It's an evolution. It's an ecosystem. It's an amusement park. You can't fit that on the cover of a book, guys. I mean, you could. It would be ridiculous, but you could. I like the name Dungeons & Dragons Evolved. I don't think they're going to call it that, but, that's what I'd call it if I was going to run it. What are you running? D&D Evolved. What's that? I can't explain it. Is it D&D 5? Is it Chicken McNugget chicken? That's it for today. Take a breath. Go outside. Enjoy spring if you're having it. If you're not, you might get spring next week. Till then, I am the OG GM. If you appreciate this nonsense, continue supporting me. And the best way to support me is, of course, to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Help me hit 2,000 subs by the end of the year. And, of course, to buy my merch. This half an hour of me talking about Wizards of the Coast disasters is brought to you by my merch, which you can purchase at Big Geek Emporium, link down below, or you can sign up for my Patreon and receive this stuff monthly automatically for $4.99 a month. That's a huge bargain. And be guaranteed to at least 2 products, if not more, a month, plus exclusive Steve content. So those are the best ways to support me and make sure the OG GM continues to provide you with the nonsense it has been providing you for the past however long I've been doing this, 200 years? I don't know. Till next time, get off my land, you damn kids.